one of the things that we can do while we're here is embrace the parts of us that we love, shine light on the parts of us that we love, recognize that we came here out of love and to be love and to bring even more love here. Because what I do believe that we can do is, whether we're a parent, be the best parent that we can be, teacher, best teacher we can be, garbage collector, light worker, doctor, whatever we're here being, be the best that we can be. Because as we're living our life with love and we're being light in the world, then that helps draw into this frequency, which is a lower, slower frequency than spirit. But it helps draw into this frequency even more divine awareness.
Chenée, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation, Libby.
I have too. So why don't we start by you sharing a little bit about yourself and your work?
I consider myself to be an energy intuitive, which just simply means that I'm a highly sensitive person and definitely tuned into the energetic nature of life and the fact that life is multidimensional, as are each one of us. I've been able to sense spirit since I was a child, and I realized that that is a skill that is passed down to me through the lineage on my side of my mom, and then she's pretty sure that that came from her dad. So it's been interesting to see and to talk with her over the years about what sort of clairs she has. So I have clairaudience, clairalliance, clairvoyance, claircognizance, and clairsentience. And I know for sure she at least has clairvoyance and clairaudience. And she might have more of the clairs, and I'm just not aware of that. But so the way that I go through life is I see everything and everyone as multidimensional. So oftentimes when I'm looking at someone, I can actually see what looks like grids of light around each person. And then if I were to really focus in really deeply, I could actually see grids of light even around each cell that's inside of our body. So I've been really shown that we are beings of light, and we just need to remember that and to reawaken to that. So over the course of my life, I always knew that I wanted to be of service in this world. And at first that manifested as working in the nonprofit world. And then that eventually manifested as me really finding my true calling and really truly embracing the skills that I have. I try not to call them gifts, only because I think that we're all born tapped in this way, but maybe someone's family doesn't hold that importantly or tries to make the child believe that that's just their imagination. Or maybe things are said to people at school or by teachers that kind of make them shut that side down. But so I've always been aware that I wanted to be of service in this world. So I think it was back in 2009 that I started taking a Reiki course and fell in love with that practice. And so immediately worked my way up through all of the levels and got certified as a Reiki master, and then immediately started volunteering my services. So I volunteered for 4 years, offering Reiki services to patients that were in hospice care. And then when I found out that I could sit vigil with patients as they were making their transition from this physical realm to the afterlife, I volunteered to be on that team. And just such beautiful and sacred things happened when I was sitting vigil with people making their transitions. And then I started volunteering my services as well with senior centers and with wildlife animal sanctuaries, and even an organization that did equine facilitated therapy to provide Reiki for their horses. And so I remember when I first started my own wellness arts practice in 2010, after being with my first client and hearing my client give this wonderful feedback of, "Thank you, Chenée. This is the first time in probably 20 years that I've actually felt back in my body." She had had so much trauma that she had just really disassociated herself from her body. And after just one Reiki session, she just felt so much back home in her body and safe to be there once again. So I remember looking in the mirror afterwards, after I was, washing my hands and just looking in the mirror, and I recognized myself in a way that I hadn't recognized myself before. So I knew that I had finally found my true calling. And then over the years, as I would do Reiki, I would start to notice, wow, people's loved ones are showing up in spirit. Intuitive hits are coming to me. Information is flowing to me. And I always give people their right to privacy, so I don't ever read people intuitively without their permission. And so then I would always ask clients, I'm really getting these beautiful messages coming through. Would you like to hear them? I'm seeing these beautiful things come through. Would you like to hear what I'm seeing? So then that helped me snowball into what I dubbed spoken word energy healing. And then from there, I just felt really called to develop my mediumship skills. So I took a mediumship course, and that led to another mediumship course that led to hours and months of practicing to really make sure that I was very accurate, because I like to do what's called evidence-based mediumship readings, where I can bring through personality traits, I can bring through somebody's favorite something, I can bring through things that are going to be very meaningful. So it's not a general reading, it's very specific. And then I asked my angels and spirit guides, what else would you like for me to offer into this world? And I heard very clearly, offer something called GRAND Attunements. And for me, GRAND stands for the gift of remembering our angelic nature and divinity. Because each one of us is divine. Each one of us has this divine spark within us. And we oftentimes forget that, or because we're part of a culture that teaches us, oh, that's too grandiose, or you have Messiah complex if you think you're divine. And so we forget that, or we cover over it, or we go through hardships in life, and it kind of knocks that memory out of us. So when I do these beautiful attunements, I'm not attuning people to their angelic nature. I'm attuning them to remembering who they came in here to be, who they are as a being. And this counts for humans as well as non-human animals. It counts with nature, like we're all divine. And so then after a while, I started recognizing that when I would work with clients, my stories are very unique from a lot of other people who haven't spent their life really steeped in learning about spirituality and going on spiritual retreats. So I started offering mentorship programs as well. So whether someone calls themselves a light worker or a star being, or someone just wants to be a better parent or wants to be just a better person and to remember their divine essence, I offer mentorships to them so that we can actually just delve down deep and uncover their true essence and their true nature. And all of that is just kind of circling around who I've been since a child, but just uncovering who I've been. So it's been really lovely to see that I was born with all of these abilities and just found it very important over the course of my life to hone them and to get really deep into knowing who I am, what am I here for, and what is my purpose in this world. And so I guess I like to use the word purpose as opposed to gift, so that I don't separate myself away from others and say that I'm different or better, because we're all equal. We just, some of us are a little bit further along the path of remembering who we are and feeling great joy in helping others remember who they are as well. And I'm so grateful for the people who are further along the path than I am. The books that I've read, the spiritual retreats that I've gone on, I'm just so grateful that what I'm seeing now is that humanity is waking up and spiritually maturing at a much faster rate than ever before. And it feels so good to be right there in like the thick of it and the mix of it, and to help others embrace this new earth that everyone talks about and that I really do see unfolding in front of us.
I agree. And I do think that the work you do is so meaningful. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a few questions based off of what you just said. So my first question, when you had mentioned that you can see a different color around every person, do you see that without trying to or immediately? Or is that something you have to tune into? It's
much more so that I see energy around people. Sometimes it can come through with color, and sometimes it will come through almost looking like a wire grid. So when you think of a grid, it's grids of light. So luckily, I don't just see it at all times. I tune into it. So oftentimes when I'm going into a store or I'm going for a walk in nature, I'll set the intention of what would I like to experience during this outing? What would I like to experience during this walk? And then I always dedicate the merit ahead of time of whatever joy I feel today, whatever beauty I interact with, may I contribute that into the collective consciousness, into the awareness of all that's around us, because so many people are steeped in fear and steeped in worry. And that's what's getting kind of transmitted into the collective consciousness. So I always like to transmit love and joy and being bathed in nature and just holding the intention, may I see light in each being. So as I'm walking through life, I've learned how to live in this three-dimensional world in a way that I know what's in front of me. But I can also, whenever I want to, tune into the light that's around each being, the light that's around each thing. I'll just have really beautiful vortexes open up around me. I'll have energy open up around me. And the reason why I need to keep control for my own self of what's the 3D world and what's the multidimensional world is because I need to know, okay, well, I'm experiencing this sense of weightlessness right now. I'm experiencing this sense of a portal opening up. okay, well, I'm driving my car right now. So I need to be able to keep my eyes on the road and know that's a red light coming up. So I do know how to turn it off and turn it on. And so when I'm going to go into a big group of people, which is not my favorite thing to do, but if I am going to go into a big group of people, I'll just turn that off. Because I do, like I said a moment ago, people have their right to privacy. So sometimes people will be like, oh, are you going to read my mind? No, I don't read people's minds. I can read your energy field with your permission. If something really urgent needs to come through, that will come through in a way that then I have an opening to say to someone, hey, I'm kind of picking up something. Are you open to hearing this? One time, many years ago, I had this really strong intuition when I was out shopping that someone who was near me, and I didn't know who she was, but I knew who was being pointed out. I just heard guidance from my angels and spirit guides. This person's having a really tough day. So I don't know if she was contemplating suicide. I don't know what it was, but I just knew that she was having a really tough day. So the guidance was just walk really close by her and just let your light shine so bright that it helps uplift hers. I didn't have to touch her. I didn't have to say anything to her. It was just more like she's in a really kind of dark spiral right now of just deep emotions that were hard. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm glad that I don't have to touch her because not everyone, I guess sometimes you could say, oh, excuse me, and touch someone's shoulder and walk on by or whatever. But so I just walked by her and just kind of lingered just very briefly behind her. And just really, it's kind of like the image that comes to mind is like a puffer fish. Like, they're this little fish, and when something startles them, they puff out. So I just was able to visualize just walking by her and just really emitting so much light that it merged with her energy field. Now, she has free will. So I definitely believe that if someone doesn't want to absorb this energy, they don't have to. But I could just tell that there was a change in the energy once I walked by and then kept walking. And that was all that was needed. And so then what I just started learning was, okay, well, if I go through my life every day with that intention of emitting light, emitting a sort of serene feeling, emitting love, then the beings that need that the most will feel it and will absorb it. And because of free will, like I said, I'm not running around like imposing things upon people, but I just like that concept that I've been around certain people that I can't explain why, but they just feel very calming. They feel very nourishing. And so each and every day, that's what I try to be in this world. And so, yes, I can see energy around people when I focus on it, but I can certainly turn it off.
Whenever you had mentioned that you used to be with people in hospice as they were transitioning, and that you had some pretty epic stories there, what is a story that you would not mind sharing from that experience in your life?
I think so I don't really have like specifics to put into words. It's more like a feeling that came through. The feeling really was just this sense of when I would walk in the room and nobody else would be in there. Maybe their family was too far away. Maybe they didn't have family that were alive here physically anymore. There would be this feeling of just this absolute calmness. No feeling of desperation, no feeling of sorrow or sadness, which was really great. But it was just this feeling of, oh, okay, I'm coming into a sacred space. I'm coming into a time when this being is getting ready to, as they say, shed this mortal coil, right? Just leave this physical form. And that's a very sacred time. So it was more of just this feeling of just sitting there and feeling just great honor that I was being allowed to be there. Because what I've learned from all the years of volunteering in hospice, most of the time, people in hospice do have a choice of when they go. And so we all have heard those stories of my loved one was constantly around the clock with somebody beside them. And then the moment that so-and-so went up to take a 5-minute break to go to the bathroom, that's when they made their transition. So I was always aware that when the beings would start their transition in my presence, that was because they wanted the transition to take place in the presence of someone else. Sometimes after I would go home and the person hadn't yet made their transition, they then made their transition. So one of the most beautiful things I got to witness and see time and time again was that a lot of us do, when we're that close to the time of the transition, do have control over if we go in the presence of others or if we go on our own. And some people do just feel more comfortable going on their own. And what I've been shown through a lot of the mediumship readings that I've done is that what happens at the time of physical death is that the larger part of the soul, so the larger part of our soul, is always in spirit, with only a small portion of it focused here. That creates a beautiful field of energy that then coalesces into a human form. And then there's also a human spirit, which is divine. So at the moment of transition, an even larger part of the soul, almost the whole soul, is focused on this beautiful transition that's about ready to take place. At that time, loved ones start showing up. So not only was I there sitting vigil with people, but their loved ones were showing up and sitting vigil to welcome them back home to the spirit world. And then the human spirit begins to make its transition and begins to make its exit from the physical form. So then once the body has completely lost all life force energy, and that life force energy has now drained out, now the soul and the spirit and all of the loved ones will sit vigil for just a little bit with the human form or the animal form, whatever form is making its transition. And then this beautiful energy changes because all of a sudden now that beautiful life force energy is no longer in the being and no longer in the room. However, when loved ones do show up to sit with the body or to go to a funeral, then that's when all this beautiful energy comes back again. So sometimes people will have this thought that there's lots of souls and spirits hanging out in cemeteries, and that's not what I've been shown. Whenever I walk through cemeteries, what I see is love there. I see memory echoes. I see hopes, and I see sometimes sadness because people who are in funerals and go to cemeteries are sad for their loved ones, not knowing that their loved ones are in a much beautiful, grander place. But what I do see, because I was recently walking through a cemetery, and when people are there to pay respects to the grave site, that's when the soul and the spirit will show up again to be with their loved ones and to just be right there standing there with them. And then when the loved one goes home and leaves the cemetery, then the spirit and the soul leaves the cemetery as well and refocuses back to the spirit world.
Do you think that they visit us other times as well?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there are so many times when my loved ones in spirit will just drop in and I can feel their presence. If I haven't paid attention to that, then they'll make sure I see repeating numbers. They'll make sure I hear a song. They'll do whatever they need to do to get our attention. Now, every single day, one of the first things I say when I wake up, first off, is thank you. Thank you for another day. And may I be a channel for divine love and light to flow into this world. May I be a vessel to shine divine light. And then I will always say, whoever wants to interact with me today, whoever wants to visit me today, you are welcome. And remind me of your presence in wondrous ways, because they will absolutely remind us of their presence in ways that just will completely open your mind and open your heart. And so yes, they're here with us whenever we think of them as well. I say that they're not here with us 24/7 because they have their own lives that they're leading in the spirit world. And even when we're together with a spouse or we have children, especially once they've grown and left the house, we're hardly ever around somebody 24/7. So, but anytime we think of them, boom, they're right here with us. They will come and visit us on their own volition and let us know that they're here. So that's what I love, love, love. And I also love what I've learned from my mediumship readings with people and angel and spirit guide readings is that since we as a soul are mostly in the spirit world right now, we are right now simultaneously living two lives. We're living the life here in this physical realm, and we're also living a life in the spirit world as our soul and interacting with everyone who's meaningful to us, those that are still here physically because we're interacting with their soul, as well as those that are currently in the spirit world and no longer here physically.
Do you believe we only come here once or in a human body, or do you think we come here multiple times in a human form?
I think that is up to each one of us individually. I spent many years studying Buddhism. That's one of the many spiritual traditions that I studied for a while and went on retreats. And the interesting thing is a lot of Buddhist schools don't even teach rebirth. They teach reincarnation. But many years after I quit studying Buddhism, I was listening to this one wonderful man. I think his name is Sean O'Leary, I think is how you pronounce his last name. And he's like an excommunicated Catholic priest. And so he teaches mystical Christianity and mystical teachings. He's incredibly knowledgeable about all sorts of mystical teachings. And he's the one who many years later, after studying Buddhism, I learned, well, the Buddha didn't actually teach reincarnation. He taught rebirth. So reincarnation requires a self that is going to reincarnate through multiple lifetimes. And you can rack up negative karma, you can rack up positive karma. That's much more so, from my understanding, a Hindu belief system. And from what I understand, the original person who became Buddha actually was born into Hinduism. And so from my understanding, one of his main teachings was this wheel of life called life, death, life, death. He called it samsara. And he said one of the ways that you step off of the wheel of samsara is you just choose no more rebirth. He did not teach that there was a self that continues uninterrupted from lifetime to lifetime. So his teaching really was you can in any moment attain enlightenment. In the flash of a moment, in the blink of an eye, you can attain enlightenment. You can step into nirvana. And you can choose no more rebirth. So one of the things that I really never really resonated with, I never resonated with the teaching of original sin, that we came in flawed. I never resonated with the thought of negative karma. Because then what we're taught is anyone who's living a life full of hardships, well, that's their negative karma. And now they've got to come back and pay that off and finally reach enlightenment through many, many lifetimes. That to me is a very fear-based teaching. And so what I've learned is that if we want this to be our last rebirth, it can be our last rebirth. If we want to come back and have future lifetimes completely, associated with any previous lifetime, we can. However, everything that any of us has learned, I believe, goes into this beautiful collective of memories. For some people, they're going to call that the Akashic Records. For some people, they're just going to call it collective memories, a catalog of everything that's ever happened. So I have been shown that we don't have to keep coming back to learn lessons because we in the spirit form, and as I'm saying this, I'm getting this vertigo feeling that I get when spirit is flowing through me, just really wanting something to be said. We can, in the spirit world, tap into the collective of memories, and we can have any experience we ever want to have. And we don't have to come back in here into physical form. I don't have children, so there's really nothing that sort of anchors me to this planet that would invite me to come back for another lifetime. So I don't actually intend to come back for another physical lifetime. I feel like I've had enough physical experiences because I do recall at least 3 different lifetimes. And I feel like that's enough now. I don't know how many I've had in culmination, but what I believe now that I've been shown is that we are welcome to remain in the spirit world and to still focus on this physical earth. So it's not like I'm just going to go off to the spirit world, into heaven, into the afterlife and not worry about anything ever again. I'm still going to be very much in love with this planet and very much in love with wanting to help elevate the consciousness of this planet, because I believe that this planet is a sentient being itself, and it is the beautiful container within which life takes place, and we have our experiences here. But I also believe that sometimes people will come back out of habit. They'll come back because they've had kids and they've had grandkids and they want to come back. They want to have another lifetime. For me, what I know that I'm ready now to go into the next stage and to be of assistance from the spirit world. And most likely that's going to be focused here on Earth, but I don't know. I'll see when I get there. But I just love the concept that right now in the spirit world are all these beautiful groupings of souls and beings that are specialists. So we've got Nikola Tesla, we've got Marie Curie, we've got Einsteins of the world, we've got Mother Teresa's, we've got all of these beautiful people, beautiful beings in soul that were here once upon a time. And they still want to be of assistance. And so I believe that they transmit information to scientists, to doctors, to healers. When I do this work, I don't do this work alone. I am doing this work with the assistance of my soul, of my spirit guides, of my guardian angels, and other beings who were here physically that do the same work that I do. And so I just think that it's really important to recognize that everything that we're doing is going into a collective consciousness, and we can use it to learn and grow, but we don't have to keep coming back here for that. I also really like the concept that many teachers have taught that we are moving from a carbon-based life form to a non-physical light-based life form. And what I love about that is that once we finally make that transition, then we don't have a physical body that needs to be taken care of, that needs to be fed, that needs to be clothed, and therefore nothing else has to die so that we can live. And so to me, I just love that concept that we were born perfect and holy. We came here because we heard a call of love. I think it was Kyle Gray that I heard say that. He's a man who really teaches a lot about angels. And he's one of the few people that when I heard something said, it just really, really resonated. So I don't believe that we choose our hardships. I don't believe that we choose to come here to be a perpetrator of something or the victim of something. But I believe what he says is that we come here as a call to love, and that what I've been shown as well is that because procreation keeps happening, reproduction keeps happening, and every body needs a soul. Whether it's a human or a non-human animal, everything needs a soul. And so therefore, Source is like, okay, well, there's another procreation happening, there's another reproduction happening. Therefore, that beautiful body needs a soul. So I do think some souls will come back by choice, and that if a lifestyle is going to be filled with lots of hardships, and Source can see this ahead of time, that I think sometimes Source cleaves off a bit of itself to become the soul that is going to occupy and animate that beautiful being that's going to go through these grave hardships because of what they're being born into. So I do believe we have control over it. I don't believe that we're just thrust back into it, nor do I believe that we're tricked back into it, nor do I believe that we have to choose the right light. All of these things that I've learned from all of these different religions, they're very somewhat steeped in fear. And I feel like a large part of my life, when I was younger anyway, was just wasted being afraid of things. And so that's one of the things that I really love doing with the work, doing through the work that I do, is just really assuring people, when you get fully and completely back focused on the spirit world, it is going to feel so beautiful and like such a wonderful homecoming that if you do choose another lifetime, that is a choice, and it's going to be made out of love. It isn't going to be made out of fear. And no, you're not going to choose a bunch of hardships. And you're going to have all these beautiful angelic beings right here with you to guide you and to help you through your hardships and to help remind you each and every day of your divinity. And I also believe that our angels and spirit guides right along with our soul every moment are entraining us to the highest versions of ourselves. Because if we can really live from that sacred and divine place that we all are, we all come from, we all unfold back into, then we wouldn't even have the ability to hurt others. It would just be such a foreign concept to us that it wouldn't even ever be a choice that was made. Those choices, though, to hurt others are made from the human, small human, unawakened ego. So I do see a difference between the awakened ego and the unawakened ego. An ego is necessary so that we can suss out what's mine and what's yours, what's mine and what's theirs. But if we stay functioning from an unawakened ego, we're liable to make decisions in this world that are hurtful and harmful. And when we can let our ego awaken and become in service to spirit and in service to source, then we become this really powerful being that can help affect positive change in this world.
I was asking about coming back or not because I didn't know if you had ever experienced a reading where you were trying to communicate with someone and you couldn't communicate with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the beautiful thing is, because our soul is so grand and can be in multiple places at the same time, the beautiful thing is, even if someone has chosen a rebirth, I can still contact them in the spirit world with the part of their soul that was here animating, like with your mom. I have heard one of your podcasts and heard, the hardships that you went through and that she went through in her addictions. So the good news is she's not in the spirit world with those addictions. She's not in the spirit world feeling remorse because she went through what we all go through, which is a life review. And she was forgiven during that life review by her own self, by your soul, by your spirit, by anyone else that she hurt. And she understood why she had the addictions. She understood why her life went the way that she did. And she was able to forgive everyone who perpetrated harm upon her. Because, these things don't happen in a vacuum. People aren't born to be addicted. We aren't born to be perpetrators of crimes. Usually life circumstances lead to that. Sometimes brain damage leads to that. Sometimes chemical imbalances lead to that. But so the beautiful thing is, your mom was able to shed the parts of her persona that she didn't want to bring with her. And she's able to be in the spirit world with the best parts of her because that's the human spirit now merged with the soul. If she wanted to reincarnate again, and if she has reincarnated, well, she's off having that experience while still also in the spirit world having the experience of her soul and experiencing whatever she wants to experience. I've also heard people say that, I guess I shouldn't giggle at this, but it's just such a unusual teaching. I've heard people say that, we choose to come here because heaven is boring, because the spirit world is boring. And I think, no, I've never, ever been shown that. What I've been shown is that's a human storyline that we put on top of things almost to kind of console ourselves for being here in this physical form. But there's really no consolation needed for being here in physical form. One of the things that we can do while we're here is embrace the parts of us that we love, shine light on the parts of us that we love, recognize that we came here out of love and to be love and to bring even more love here. Because what I do believe that we can do is, whether we're a parent, be the best parent that we can be, teacher, best teacher we can be, garbage collector, light worker, doctor, whatever we're here being, be the best that we can be. Because as we're living our life with love and we're being light in the world, then that helps draw into this frequency, which is a lower, slower frequency than spirit. But it helps draw into this frequency even more divine awareness. So I believe what's taking place right now is all of us that are here are being invited to step into a role of being loving, being kind, being powerful. Because loving and kind isn't weak and wishy-washy, it's very powerful. And to help draw into this beautiful planet and into this beautiful realm, even more divine awareness, so that we can truly merge heaven and earth, merge the spirit and the physical. So there have been instances where I've heard other mediums talk about this, where they'll be aware of the reincarnated version of this soul. But because the soul is so much more large than just this one being, they're able to also communicate with that person in spirit. There's also instances where when someone gets into spirit, they don't want to be the person that they were when they were here physically. And they've had so many hardships while they were here that they just want to drop that persona. But that persona and that energy as an echo can still exist in the spirit world and be absorbed into the soul. So that beings, loved ones here physically, can still communicate and can still get apologies that are so necessary and still feel love that's so necessary.
Sorry. Do you think that our loved ones can communicate with us through dreams?
Oh my goodness, yes. In fact, that is one of the easiest ways. So it's super easy for them to communicate with us. So it's one of the easiest ways that we can receive their messages. And if you've ever had any dreams where you wake up and you feel like, I just spent time with my loved one in spirit, you just spent time with your loved one in spirit. And in fact, when I was a child, I used to walk in my sleep and talk in my sleep. I wouldn't have known this back then because I didn't have the words for it. I didn't have the language for it or the knowledge for it. But now, many years later, what I've come to realize, I wasn't walking and talking in my sleep. My body was acting out what was going on in the spirit world. And so, as you know, when we sleep, when we're in REM sleep and we're dreaming, we have sleep paralysis so that we don't act out our dreams. Well, I believe that for whatever reason, that particular thing wasn't online for me, so the sleep paralysis didn't happen. And so I was walking and talking in my sleep. But now, years later, I realized I wasn't just babbling. I was actually talking to beings in spirit. So have you had dreams where you just wake up and you're like, I'm pretty sure I just was interacting with my mom in spirit?
I remember them all.
Okay.
And the first time my mom was in my dream, it was not a good dream. And she died unexpectedly. So in that dream, she was very confused. She didn't know where she was. She was in a dark hallway or a completely dark room, and then was in a hospital bed. And she was crying. She was like, I don't know where I am, was aware she was sick. And I had already thought she would be very confused. So I didn't know if that was her or not. But then the next dream, she was in the passenger seat. I was in the back seat. I do not know who was driving us. And she was talking like nothing was wrong.
Okay.
And I was kind of frustrated with her. No, sorry, that's the third one. Let me backtrack. The second dream, she came and was talking, and I was like, where have you been? Because I was frustrated. I hadn't seen her for a while. And she was like, Brandon's been showing me around, and Brandon is my dead cousin.
Okay.
And then the third one is the car situation I was just talking about. And she was talking like nothing was going on. And I was frustrated, and I was like, do you not know? And she was like, that I'm dead? Yeah, I know. And she just kept talking like it was nothing. And I've had more since then. They've all been good, but in one of them, we were laughing and having a good time, but we both knew. And then I said, I just miss you. And she started crying, and I cried, and then I woke up. So yeah, I felt like she ended the dream.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to hold this space and honor that, because no matter how much time passes, when we recall these dreams and recall the physical passing, it's hard. And so what I always like to tell people is I'm not one of those ones that thinks that time heals all wounds. Sometimes what it is that scar tissue has just grown around it and we've learned to coexist with it. And when we pick it right back up, it hurts us just as much as day one. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. And I hope you don't mind, but what I'll share is when she came through in that dream where she was confused, that was not her visiting you. And once again, I'm getting that discombobulated feeling and I'm getting the hot flashes that I get when spirit is flowing through me. So she really wants you to know that at the moment of transition, there is no confusion. So when you had that particular dream where she was afraid and it was dark and she was in a hospital bed and she was afraid, that was your subconscious bringing forth something that you were hoping was not the case. Bringing forth something that maybe you've even been told by others. Because what I've been shown very clearly, and she's even moving my leg and my foot like she just really wants this to be known, is at the moment of transition, immediately, because the larger part of our soul, like I said, is in the spirit world, immediately that huge portion of the soul shows up so that the portion that's focused here remerges with it. The human spirit merges with it. And immediately, yes, there's a life review, but based on cosmic time, that life review happens quickly. You feel the sorrow and the suffering that you caused others, either purposely or inadvertently, but then you very quickly also feel the love that you caused others, that you shared with others. You feel the joy. All is forgiven. You forgive everyone you need to forgive, and it happens instantaneously. It really does. And then, beautifully, everyone shepherds that soul into a higher octave, into a higher frequency. There is no in-between. There's no, as the Tibetans teach in Buddhism, there's no bardo. There's no in-between place where you're going to get stuck. Souls don't get stuck places. You're here focused, and then you're there focused. And the reason why I can say that with just such conviction and belief is because, like I keep repeating myself, the larger part of the soul is already in heaven, in the afterlife. So I think your mom just beautifully orchestrated you having me on your podcast, because I don't know if anyone has ever shared this with you before. That particular thing was just a dream. Now, when she came to you in the other dreams, letting you know, yeah, I know I'm dead, and your cousin's been showing me around, and everything's fine, those were visitations. Anytime you have an experience where somebody feels lost or stuck or mournful, that's not a visitation. That is the human psyche. That is the human conscious awareness, which is lower in vibration. That is worry. That is fear. And that is all these storylines that have been piled on top of us through so many generations. So the reason why I feel the work that I do is so important is I really want to help people know there is nothing to be afraid of. That doesn't mean go hasten our death, but there is nothing to be afraid of in death. The only thing that dies is the physical form. The essence, the soul, the spirit, that continues, and that is immediately absorbed into love and brought back home to love. And it just simply is a higher octave of frequency. And that's one of the main things that your mom really wants to bring through, is how happy she is and how she came to an understanding of so many things at the moment of her death. So no, there was never fear and there was never worry. There can be the worry and the fear on the human side, right before the transition happens, but that very quickly shifts, so that when even if we're witnessing someone's death and it looks painful, it's really not painful to the soul and the spirit. And yeah, that's just the main thing that she really does want to get through, is that there was no pain, that there was no sorrow. And I guess I don't want to keep saying more, because I feel like this is going into a mediumship reading, and I want you to have your privacy as well. So I know more wants to come through, but I want to afford you your privacy as well.
Thank you. And that wasn't my intention either. I'm so
that's
sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No, okay. Oh, that's okay. No, I didn't feel like you were trying to get a mediumship reading, but because whenever spirit flows through, she's moving my foot, she's putting hot flashes through, she's giving me vertigo. It's like, okay, but this is not a mediumship reading. So, but yeah, she is just so ever present, and she's larger than life. And I know that you've heard this before from if you've ever had mediumship readings, but she is so very proud of you, and you are larger than life. I hope you definitely know that about your energy as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. I try
Good.
to. I try to remember. You've mentioned animals a few times. Do you do sessions around our animals that have passed as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I can definitely connect with them because all of my beautiful loved ones in spirit now that have occupied the dogs of animals. And the reason why I say that is because when we're here in the human form and we have pets, those pets only have a certain amount of agency and autonomy, right? Like they come in to our lives and they share our lives. They feed or they eat when we feed them. They play when we play with them. They really have a little bit of a lack of freedom. So what I've been shown is that especially when you have an animal that you share your life with, it feels like a soul animal. They just bring out the best in you. They allow you to shower them with unconditional love. They shower that love right back to you. What I've been shown is those are actually angelic beings that agreed to come into a physical form, even knowing that they were going to be limited. Their lifespans were going to be limited and their abilities were going to be limited while they were here. But once they've made their transition, now they're back to being their angelic beingness, their angelic forms. And when it comes our time to transition, we'll see them in their physical, familiar forms that are so comforting to us. And then when we're ready, which happens quickly, when we're ready, they then show us what they look like now as their angelic forms. And the reason why I love that is because we don't own pets in the spirit world. We don't have hierarchy over things in the spirit world. And so sometimes even when people will do a mediumship reading to be in contact with their loved ones that were here physically as a human, their loved ones that were here as a dog or a cat or a bird or whatever will come through. And there's always so much joy. And always, always, always there is appreciation. Thank you for showering me with so much love while I was here. Thank you for talking to me even though I'm no longer here. And one of my dogs that made his transition, it was right here in my healing oasis in my home. And we had the vet come here to euthanize him because his life force was draining and it was really his time to go. And after she administered the euthanasia drug, I didn't want to interrupt what she was doing. So I didn't say anything, but I knew when his soul was completely 100% leaving his body because I saw golden particles of light lifting up from his body and going up towards the left-hand side and then dissipate. And so she said, well, let me listen to his heart to make sure he's gone. And because she's a vet and I want her to finish doing her job, I didn't say, oh yeah, I know he's gone. It's like, yes, listen to the heart because I know his life force has already gone now. His soul is still here, but the life force is drained. So then immediately I felt his presence. And with all of my dogs who've made their transitions, I have immediately felt their presence. I hear the clicking of their nails on the hardwoods. I feel the depression of their weight on my bed. And with this sweet dog who I had named Aslan, what was really beautiful is, I don't know, maybe a month or two after that, and I was still feeling his presence, and I still feel it to this day, even though it's been more than a year. I walked into this room, and I came in here, because I always turn off my modem every night. I don't like to sleep with all that wireless energy coming through the home. And I walked in here, and I saw this really beautiful golden particle of light, just really gorgeously kind of hovering above the ground and then kind of raise above the ground. And so I've also seen him in physical form, but I love the fact that the spirit world can be super obvious and the spirit world can be super subtle. And so we are just being invited to just go through our life, not only setting intentions, but then holding our attention as well. So for beings who've lost loved ones, be they people or pets, I just always say, set the intention each day. Who would you like to hear from? What kind of messages would you like to get? Play the sign game with them. What signs would you like for them to bring through? Because they will oblige. But if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. Because sometimes I've been walking around with friends and I'll know what their signs are. I know what they're meant to be keeping their eyes open for, and they'll totally miss it. And I'll say, well, you saw that, right? Or they'll tell me later about something that happened and I'll say, well, you saw that, right? That was your sign. And then so the more and more and more you can practice at asking for signs and remembering to keep your eyes open for these signs, the more that you're going to recognize, oh my gosh, my loved ones are around me as much as I want them to be. And we don't ever have to feel like we want them around us too much. So even though I said they're not with us 24/7, if we want them to be around us 24/7, they can, because they'll just shift a part of their focus to us, with the other part of their focus having their other part of their life in the spirit world. But They are more than happy when we speak out loud to them. We are happy when we hear a song that they made sure that they played so that we would hear. They love it when we recognize these signs and laugh, because that's what they want. We don't pull their energy down with our sadness. So I've also heard some people teach, oh, you're not going to ever be in contact with them if you're sad. You have to get out of grief first. Oh my goodness, that is not true. I have been so deeply steeped in grief before that actually my angels came to me in my room. Well, I shouldn't say came to me, they're always with me, but my angels allowed me to see them in a physical form in my room, but they were as dark silhouettes because I was trying to sleep. And they knew that if they were too bright, it would wake me up. And so they were there with me, and I just kept waking up and looking at them and then going back to sleep. And I wasn't quite sure what exactly they were doing, but I knew that something sacred was taking place. And the next morning, because that night I had gone to sleep and I was so deep in grief and just so sad, and I didn't want to cry. Because when you cry, you get stuffy, you can't breathe, you can't sleep. It's just this terrible thing. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to go to sleep crying. And I was laying on my back, and tears were rolling down my eyes and pulling in my ears. And it was just really annoying. And I thought, well, I have to sleep, so I'm going to just sleep crying. And then that's when I kept getting woken up throughout the night. And then the next day, when I woke up, I felt different. I felt up-leveled. I felt uplifted. The grief was still there, but it was a lot lighter. And then it took me a couple of days to really assimilate everything and to recognize, I know what my angels were doing for me. They were withdrawing and sort of extricating some of my grief for me. They were alchemizing it, and they were doing whatever they could to lift that deep grief from me. So grief changes us, as you know. It changes us at a cellular level, but once we get out of the thickness of it, and once we get past it, then if we can turn and look back at it and see the gifts that are in it. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. I believe many things happen for a reason, but not everything. So I don't believe that all these sadnesses that happen to us happen for a reason or because we chose it. But if we can get beyond it and then look back at it and find out, okay, well, what beauty can I mine from this? What beauty can I extricate from this? And how can I let it change me for the better? Because one of the reasons why I'm skillful at the work that I do and very caring at the work that I do is because I've experienced a lot of grief. Before I was even 11, I had had to say goodbye physically to my grandma, my grandpa, my childhood dog. And then when I was 17, I had a dear friend who made his physical transition in a car accident only 1 year out of graduating high school because he was a year ahead of me. So I've had a lot of grief and sadness, and I've come out the other side of it stronger. So when I hold the space for people and their grief and their sadness, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not someone who has no idea what this feels like, but I also honor that each person's journey through grief is going to be unique to them. So I love getting to hold them in that journey and to sometimes give them hope, because they can look at me and see how happy I am and recognize, okay, yeah, you can coexist with grief, and you can even learn how to become a more caring, empathic person because of that grief.
What advice do you have for anyone that is very heavy in their grief right now?
I would say, and I always try really hard not to use platitudes. That's the one thing I do not do, because I just think that they can just be hurtful. And sometimes people use platitudes because they just don't know what to say. So I think just to drop deep into myself, into how I've gotten through grief, is let yourself feel it. Don't try to sugarcoat it and, okay, well, this happened for a reason. I guess what people need to do is use the coping mechanisms that help them. For some people, it helps them to believe that they're burning out their negative karma. It helps them to believe they chose it. That helps them to believe that this will be a purpose. So even though those don't resonate with me, if it resonates with each person, utilize those philosophies and those teachings. But first and foremost, go ahead and feel it. Go ahead and be sad. Go ahead and cry. Go ahead and speak out loud. Do whatever you need to do. But then maybe even give it a time limit for how far you'll go into that grief, and then promise yourself that you're going to do something after that time limit is up each day. Because right when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to lift your head up and get through. But so just really recognize that we all are going to get through the grief that is presented to us in whatever way we can. So swim through it, feel it, honor it, and also honor yourself in it. I've had times before where I've just felt so heavy in grief that I thought, what if I just sit down right here, right now, and just never move again? And then I heard very clearly, but that's not your purpose. Your purpose isn't here to be held down by the grief. And we're very sorry that you're going through the grief. So it was my angels talking to me at that time. And so for me, I just heard very clearly, don't sit down, don't stop. And then I very clearly telepathically communicated with my angels, or actually in this case, I think I spoke out loud. And I said, okay, I'm going to lean back right now. And if you're really there, I need you to catch me. And I physically leaned back, and I physically was caught by something so that I didn't fall. And so then for me, what that really highlighted for me is sometimes when we are deep in grief is the times when we're in a very heightened state of awareness. Some people will teach that your grief is very low and dense. Well, for me, the grief can be a time when you're in a very heightened state of awareness and you can be really open to feeling your loved ones around you. So if you believe in angels and spirit guides, call those in. If you believe that your loved ones are in spirit but still here with you, call them in. If you believe in a soul, call an even larger focus of your soul to attention on you right now. Give yourself permission to grieve. If there are people in your life that aren't going to support you in your grief, don't talk to them about it. Because all they're going to say is, oh, you should be over it by now. Aren't you over that by now? Kind of a thing. So give yourself permission and reach out to others who also know what it feels like to be steeped in grief. And then, like I said, set a time frame each day, how much time you're going to spend grieving, but then spend an equal amount remembering the beauty that's all around us as well, and try to counterbalance that. And then hold the intention that we can alchemize grief by being grateful. Not that I'm saying be grateful for the grief, but in order to even have the grief, that means that you loved deeply. And so be grateful for the love that you shared with whatever being you're grieving. And I know it's very difficult at times when there was a difficulty in a relationship, such as surviving with somebody who had an addiction or had an abusive personality. There can still be love for that person deep inside of us. And so really, really dig deep into finding something to be grateful for. But it's not like putting a Band-Aid over a gushing wound. You're really, truly allowing yourself to go through the grief and recognize that grief is spiral. You know, there's not those stages of grief like was taught all those years ago. It's very, very spiral. And sometimes you're going to think, oh, good, I'm to the other side of it. And then boom, you're pulled right back down into it. But then recognize, okay, that's okay, because then I'm going to come back out of that spiral. But what I always do tell people, if you feel any sort of suicidal ideation because of the grief, reach out to the proper people who can help you, because the majority of the time, people are going to get through that grief, and they're going to be incredibly grateful that they did not die by suicide.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chenée, where can people find you and connect with you?
My website, ChenéeFournier.com, is the best place to find me. I do have an Instagram page, which is also at Chenée Fournier, and a YouTube channel. I'm going to also be a panelist at an upcoming conference put on by Spiritual Awakenings International. That's June 7th and 8th. And it is a conference that's by donation. And so whenever anyone comes through me to get to that conference through my website or through hearing me on the podcast, I always ask the people, donate if you can. Be as generous as you can, because it helps these organizations put on the conferences, but also do an act of kindness. And if you can't afford to donate, that's okay. But do an act of kindness, because I think every act of kindness changes this world for the better. And in fact, it changes the universe for the better. And with my YouTube channel, there are a lot of spoken word energy healing sessions on there that people can go and listen to that are infused with energy healing codes that can help people awaken to who they are underneath this construct called a human being.
I love that. Thank you. Chenée, thank you so much for being here today. I've really loved our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I love your energy, and thank you for sharing what you shared as well.
Thank you so much for watching Lost and Found. If you like this episode, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe below. There will be new episodes every Friday. And if nothing else, just remember that grief is really, really hard. You don't have to do it alone. And I love you. And until next time.